Hello and welcome to this episode of Dynamicweb WTF, What's the Future of Digital Transformation? In today's episode, we talk about search in e-commerce. And we have Mark Floisand, SVP Product and Industry Marketing at Coveo. Mark is a 20-year experienced veteran in the IT industry, and he and I cover the following topics: the impact of search on shopping cart performance, search and recommendations, how data can serve a better search experience, and Mark's recommendations on when you are considering replatforming, what you need to take away from that, and several more topics. I hope you enjoyed today's live stream and that you can take elements away from it and implement it in your own situation. And with that, I would like to welcome Mark. Welcome, Mark.
Hey, Eric, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Very good. I very much look forward to this one. I know that we had some pre-talks before, and I'm very excited about the insights that you can give, because in e-commerce and website implementations, site search usually gets passed over as one of those things we will get to when we get to it. And it doesn't seem to have the same priority as personalized triggered emails, shopping cart abandonment programs, and all that. But taking steps to improve your site search can improve conversion rates and lower shopping cart abandonment, which leads to happier shoppers. So
Right.
Before we really dive into that, Mark, can you share a little bit more on what Coveo is and the role and experience you have?
Sure, absolutely. So I've been with Coveo about 4.5 years. Coveo is about 15 years old as a company and focuses very much on the whole area of more relevant experiences. So what does that mean? More relevant results when people look for something that they're trying to find, more relevant product recommendations that help them also add to the value of their cart, and frankly, more relevant content that assists them in the process of making decisions, whether those are shoppers, whether those are customers, or even employees within an organization. So our business is one of understanding the kind of context of what people are doing and using AI and machine learning to recommend the most relevant information for them at the point in time that they're at. So from a commerce point of view, you can specifically think of things like, how does one improve the commerce search on a merchant store so that when I'm looking for a particular thing, the results I find are relevant to me, they're meaningful, they're actually what I want to do, because I'm not there to search, I'm there to buy. And that's fundamentally what we enable. And then expanding their kind of frame of reference by giving them the sort of almost Amazon-like recommendations that broaden their choices. People like you that saw this may also think about that. And because you bought this, you may want to consider that. So improving the average order value as well.
Cool. Yeah, and that plays very well into what Gartner and many of the analysts are saying as well. And at Dynamicweb, what we try to help with as much as possible, that in any e-commerce environment, that when a return visitor is on the website, try to showcase on the homepage already the most fitting products. And I think with search, you can actually take that to the next level as well. And if we talk about improving the site search result, it's way more than just returning results for searching for, right? There's a lot more depth to it.
It is. And, you know, I think the people underestimate the power of search and the value of search on a commerce site. You know, we have customers that, having deployed search, come back to us and say, you know, half our navigation starts in our search box. Half. You know, and the conversions that they see from those are, you know, an order of magnitude higher, because people are coming to a particular retailer or in fact B2B distributor with something in mind. And so the best path for them is to enable them to, you know, get what it is they're looking for. And why make that difficult? Why put barriers in the way that slow down their ability to ultimately transact? We've all grown up as, you know, people living on the web now with 20 years of Google. And so we have an expectation that search is instant, it's relevant, it's at your fingertips. We all know how to do it. It's intuitive. And so when someone arrives at a commerce store, whether it's B2C or B2B, and that on-site or that on-store search doesn't deliver the same kind of expectation that we take for granted in Google, in YouTube, in Amazon, we leave. And
Yeah.
so as a primary navigation vehicle, as a primary mechanism for servicing people in the moment, it's really important that it's up to the kind of expectation level that modern consumers and buyers have. And so a large part of how to improve it is not just the what I would call it's almost that kind of cliched whack-a-mole of where you have merchandisers spending a lot of time and energy constantly sort of almost chasing their tail, trying to put new merchandising rules in and if-then rules and thesauruses because they've seen someone looking for something. You just cannot scale like that. And nor can you, again, deliver the experiences that people have come to take for granted with AI-driven machine learning capabilities. It's no secret that Amazon and Google and these companies have been investing literally billions of dollars in data scientists, in scalable cloud platforms, in algorithmic intelligence to drive automated recommendations, automated responses. And really our part in this from a Coveo standpoint is to provide that same capability to other companies so that they don't need to be an Amazon to provide the meaningful, relevant recommendations that someone's looking for when they simply go to a website and search. A lot of it is also recognizing that many companies, frankly, the vast majority of retailers are never going to get the volume of foot traffic, digital foot traffic to their store that someone like an Amazon does. Amazon knows more about you and I than we probably ever will, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and certainly more than any other retailer ever will, because the reality of it is that for most online retailers, the math is that 70% of people that show up do not create an account or register. They shop anonymously, and they may be there 2, tops 3 times a year. So the reality for most retailers is that they're not gathering like screeds of personal information to deliver these highly intuitive, personalized experiences. There isn't the volume of information for them to do that. There isn't the frequency of shopping to do that. However, what they do have is a lot of customers who individually may have gone and bought a pair of shoes and a pair of trainers and a pair of ski boots. And collectively across the retailer's catalog, and in this example, I'm using shoes as an example, but across their product catalog, they've actually got a lot of data that they've been gathering about the kinds of things people buy. And so one of the things that we advocate, and really this is very fundamental for solving what's often called the cold start problem of, how do I get this machine learning to make these recommendations when I haven't got all this data? Well, guess what? You actually have a lot of data already in the web analytics and the product interaction that people have had. And so we have models that start to be able to make recommendations to anonymous first-time visitors because we see patterns of behavior that other people have exhibited when interacting with product catalogs. You can almost think of your product catalog as kind of like almost a graph of the characteristics of products. A white shirt for a man with long sleeves has a certain set of characteristics that might be quite similar to another product. And so just by being able to analyze the data of which products people have interacted with, without even knowing who they are, is still a basis for beginning to personalize and deliver more relevant and meaningful results, even to people who are occasional shoppers or anonymous shoppers. So I guess my point is that site search has come a very, very long way from the days when it was just about keywords. That's a 20-year-old capability. What we're now using.
I like that you go into that, because also with the dynamic web product information management solution, you get all that product data, but in our case, because we are that platform built from the ground up, we can do to what you're referring to is gather web traffic, behavioral data, interactions, and combine that and use the product data element as well to then serve the best possible products on whatever page is probably ready for going to interact with. So I think that's actually quite close to what you were just sharing, correct?
Exactly. And so the whole point is that every retailer and every distributor has actually got a lot of meaningful data that they should be tapping. And so search in and of itself has very often been seen historically as kind of, this silo that one does, as you said, Eric. Sometimes it's an afterthought. And I'm here to say, one, it shouldn't be an afterthought because it's a primary navigation mechanism. And two, it doesn't have to be, your granddad's search from way back when, where everyone did sort of manual keywords, and there are machine learning models now under the hood that automatically do things like, as we said, understanding product interaction, things like automated query suggestions, the ability for example, when you and I go to Google and we start typing, those suggestions are being put to us, and guess what? They're spot on, right? No one's doing those by hand. There aren't a team of elves in the background, like, writing them all out. It is all algorithmically driven. And this capability is not unique to an Amazon or a Google. The Coveo relevance platform does exactly this, which is to provide these machine learning capabilities to automate those kind of things, because that's scalable. It doesn't require manual maintenance. It grows like crazy and continues to evolve and adapt based on actual user input.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is also very close to what you're referring to, is the ability to take all that kind of data and then basically not so much steer, but try to give the best possible search results back with the goal to have the person find exactly what they're looking for.
Exactly.
Do you maybe see in search in combination with e-commerce, do you see significant differences between B2C and B2B?
It's a good question. Yes and no, and that's and I'll that's like a non-answer.
Please do.
Right? I'll give you both sides. So where there's commonality is the fact that enterprises, frankly any business that's looking to acquire products from a distributor or a manufacturer directly, is not doing so in as some abstract entity. Behind that business is a buyer, and that buyer has a pulse and a heartbeat and flesh and blood, i.e. people. So what's common between B2C and B2B is ultimately the fact is we are dealing with people, and those people have in and of themselves brought to the workplace the expectations from their personal lives. Just because I'm a business buyer looking to buy, I don't know, plumbing parts, doesn't take away from the fact that I've got 20 years of experience living with Google and Amazon and Facebook, and I bring those consumer expectations to my job. And so from a B2B point of view, the pressure is on, frankly, to deliver great experiences that very much parallel and are on a par with the B2C consumer experiences, which have been much more focused on brand experiences, much more focused on consumer-orientated digital commerce, generally are further ahead. But the B2B sites are having to catch up because that's how they're going to survive. Where I think the differences come down to are things like the nature of the companies that very often people do business with in a B2B environment. It's less of the, as I say, the occasional things that we might see in the shoe store analogy that I gave earlier, much more one of what are my repeat purchase orders, are there automatic replenishment rules, is this what are the pricing permissions, what are the product entitlements that might be specific to a particular business contractual arrangement. And so very often if I'm a distributor or a manufacturer, I'm going to have all sorts of different pricing entitlements based on different tiers of channel. Maybe I've got distributors and top retailers and independent mom and pop shops, and they've all got different discount levels. And you want to make sure that those prices are dynamically shown, honoring those contracts. You've got things like maybe more similarity with the retail here is things like being able to do lookups for product availability. The difference is that product availability may be governed by contractual relationships that require you to always have available a certain lead time or an automatic trigger to replenish for business to business. So there's a lot of business rules that perhaps aren't necessary or deemed required in the B2C world that are essential in the B2B world. And so particularly you think of things like the price tiering, the entitlement, and how do you make sure that search honors those business rules? Because if I'm a mid-sized engineering shop, and I buy all of my my truck replenishment parts from a distributor who does those, I want to see my prices. I certainly don't want to see retail because I'm not selling at retail. And I also, it would pain me to see prices that I'm not entitled to, because that would just annoy me if there's somebody that's buying it cheaper than me. So things like pricing integrity, availability, the ability to also tap into things like product information management system, to understand the rules that go with that from a recommendation point of view. Because I've ordered a particular component, there's also, for example, a replacement lubrication kit that needs to go with it. How do you automatically cross-reference and cross-sell those as well? So those are the kind of differences, but centered on the commonality is the fact that these are people and they expect great experiences.
And I can completely agree with that one. And I could see that as well with if your e-commerce system is able to recognize the visitor, either implicitly or explicitly, that you do want to be able in a B2B environment to do customer specific pricing based on ERP integrations, other available data sources ranging from CRM to ERP basically. And I could also imagine that adds a fun complexity to the search element as well, because when I'm in a B2B environment, trying to and the system is able to recognize me, or I actually logged in to my own customer portal, I should be able to still use the search functionality, but as you said, it should not start returning other customer deals, pricing deals and all that, because that will be indeed a pain. But I could imagine from a search perspective that that's a fun complexity to actually have your ERP data connect with your e-commerce system, connecting with your search system, to then actually combine still all the right data and not return the wrong stuff.
Exactly. In fact, I'll give you a worked example of where this lives in practice. So one of our customers is a company called Fleet Pride. And this is exactly what they do. They have a network of direct customers. So Fleet Pride is in the trucks component and spare parts business. So they have customers who are entire fleets of long haul trucks. They have independent truck repair centers, and indeed they have distributors who in turn resell their components in regional bases and whatever. So this complexity is the world they live within. So, and honoring those rules, honoring and understanding where the components are. If there's a trucker like out on the highway and he or she who's driving this thing needs to pull over because there's some component that's gone wrong, how do they source the right compatible thing at the price that their fleet is entitled to, and where is it?
Yeah.
I.e., if I'm in the middle of Nebraska and this thing's broken down, is there a part that I can get my hands on to get my haulage moving again? So these are the realities that they deal with. And so that tight integration is really, really important. I think one of the other things to bear in mind is that as we think particularly about B2B, there is this need to be able to take advantage of, as you say, data from other systems that makes the experience more relevant. I'll give you an example. One of our customers is Salesforce. So Salesforce, of course, we know them, everyone knows them, and the App Exchange is the place that you as a Salesforce user go, if you're a Salesforce administrator, to add more components and capabilities to your Salesforce instance. And there's, I don't know, 600,000, I've lost count, maybe 1 million different apps up there now. And of course, the sheer variety of Salesforce customers and the number of different things that they're doing, the different industries that they live within, it's complex. Well, what we are able to do under the hood is effectively say, when you go to the App Exchange, and now you've logged in because you're an authenticated Salesforce user, we know what apps you've got installed. And we know that if you've got these 4 apps, there are people like you that have got those 4 and this 5th one. So let's recommend that 5th one to you based on observations of what people like you need and have found useful. And again, this stuff is all dynamically created. It is all using different data, in this case, data about an installed base, and being able to put that to work to make meaningful recommendations to those customers. So those are the kind of things where you start tapping into kind of non-intuitive pockets of data that can improve the relevance of the recommendations that are being made to the customer in a very kind of almost Netflix-like fashion. Here's what you might find useful because we've seen you do this and you do that, and the data says that you're probably going to find this useful. Let's predict that and recommend it.
Yeah, makes total sense. Absolutely. And I think that it's also based on a webinar we've done a little while ago with one of our implementing partners on search in e-commerce and the direct results in conversion rates. I can imagine that you have some implementation examples there as well.
We do. I'll be candid with you, Eric. One of the things we find is that, we tend to deal with very large accounts. So Coveo is very much an enterprise level organization. We focus on companies, $1 billion north. And the results that they get, they tend to not want us to talk about. So I'm not going to give names on numbers, but I will tell you that, we have, for example, a leading global electronics retailer who deployed Coveo on their e-commerce store and saw a 7% uplift in conversion. Now, at the scale they're running at, that is a lot of money.
Yeah, that makes a lot of input. Yep.
A lot of money. And I think it's testimony to the fact that not only does this technology work, but that it scales because, of course, every year, I'm based in the US, every year in the US, there is the seasonal holiday shopping process that starts in November around Black Friday and pretty much runs all the way through to the Christmas holiday. And these are big spikes in shopping. And so a large part of what the retailers themselves want to make sure is that nothing is introduced that will cause that Black Friday shopping boost to break. So they put us through rigorous testing, lots of heavy load testing. And of course, because it's a multi-tenant cloud platform, it just scales with no problem. So these are the kind of things that when you think architecturally about how do companies deploy search, we've seen a lot of people who are using maybe technology that doesn't scale like this and generates these kind of problems because you can't count for planning for that capacity. But when you move to a multi-tenant cloud platform, all of this stuff is literally on demand and enables that, let's call it, trust in knowing that those conversion rates are going to hold true over the most important shopping periods of the year.
Absolutely. That's what we see as well with the cloud solution that we have as well, that it's so easy these days not only to get up and running, but also to scale whenever it's really necessary. It's still good, of course, to try and smoke test and give it some testing rounds, certainly around the November days of shopping. But I certainly hear you that, the cloud has brought a lot of benefits when it's also true / the right cloud environment, because there's some differences to be seen there as well. So maybe also, as I think you really gave some really cool examples already, maybe technology agnostic. Would you already have certain best practices that you would recommend any e-commerce environment that is really going to focus on search?
Yeah, I think a couple of things I would point to. First and foremost, don't do this last. We talked earlier in the conversation about the fact that very often search is seen as kind of a phase 2 thing. It should not be. It should be right bang in the middle, the beginning of the project and designed in from the beginning, because it's such an important part. And I'll elaborate on that a little bit more as well from a design standpoint, because there are things to take into account right at the beginning. The other piece of it is that we talked about scale. We talked about the need to make sure that you're using a platform that can scale like crazy. I think that's really important because, as we said, if we've got, people who are seeing half their traffic come through search, and if that breaks and half your shoppers go away because of a scaling problem or a lack of ability to deliver rapid results in real time, you're just pushing customers out the door. So making sure the right underlying architecture is there to support it. And that starts to speak to, recognizing that we're seeing more and more organizations think about their architecture not as one huge monolith, but as utilizing elements that make sense for, the right engagements. As you say, maybe there's product information management, there's e-commerce checkout capability, there may be a mirror, content management components, and we're starting to see a little bit of sort of mix and match where people are saying, let me bring in kind of almost a best of breed component that supplements what I have, fits within what I have, but takes away perhaps a dependency or improves the way that this particular function might be being delivered. And that's very much a direction search is going in. We're seeing a lot of companies say, do I really need to build this again from scratch? No, because it's why? It's on demand. There are platforms that enable you to build it into your store using API calls and JavaScript integration at the front end, a modern architecture that enables this capability to be included within your preferred e-commerce platform.
Yeah.
If I may, let me go back to the point about the design thing, though. And the reason I bring it up is that very often we think about search as the results. We think about it maybe as the recommendations that might be adjacent to them, but it's deeper than that. What a modern kind of relevance and search platform does is not just deliver the right content or the right product recommendations, but also take account of what is going to help improve the actual buying experience itself for the shopper. Let me be explicit. So, for example, at Coveo, we have a feature we call dynamic navigation. And what that does is, if you think of your search results, you go to a store, again, let's go to the shoe scenario. You're looking for a pair of shoes and you'll get a whole set of results, and probably with a set of facets down the side that you can kind of filter and drill into, like shoe size and color and, men or women or whatever, the sort of navigational facets. Those things are invariably hard-coded, built by hand, and the largest stores on the planet will put a lot of development energy into actually writing and tailoring those navigational things. They're always out of date. They're invariably wrong. The content very often doesn't match the facets that you picked. I'll give you an anecdote. My wife and I recently reorganized our lounge, and we've had this mat in there for the longest time. It's rectangular and it just doesn't fit the room anymore. So my wife says, I'm going to go buy a square rug. So fine. We went to a website that will remain nameless. And of course, look for rugs, and there on the facets, it's got sizes, and, you click square, and we get all these results, including one that was 8 foot by 5 foot. Now, you need junior school math to know that's not a square, right? So
it's always amazing.
Right. So there's this broken experience that crops up time and time and time again, this disconnect between what the shopper's trying to buy and the navigational experience that frankly is just getting in the way and delivering the wrong stuff. So dynamic navigation is about changing those things, only putting up facets that are relevant and taking away any of the distraction that may actually slow that shopper down. You don't want to do this by hand. You don't want to do it using rules. You want to take advantage of machine learning that sees the kind of things that people click on. I'll give you a very real example. One of our customers is in the consumer electronics business. And so, for example, if you're shopping for something like a monitor, we see in the sort of search terms that people look for that there's a lot of commonality with things like 4K monitors. So if I'm looking for a 4K monitor, I'm expressing intent of buying a monitor with a resolution that is 4K capable, right? So there's a whole lot of facets that suddenly become irrelevant in terms of things like screen size and so on. So let's push those down, because I've already expressed my intent in that very simple search term. And so it's using machine learning to start gleaning this intent from the data and putting that into automated practice to change not just the results, not just the recommendations, but the entire shopping experience to be tailored to make it easier for that buyer to buy.
Yeah, fully hear you on that. And I think that is the kind of I would call it personalization, to bring it back into some of the content elements of it, that where the strength is. Because as you share, if you are searching for 4K monitors, you're probably not going to find that at a 19-inch, if those things still exist, monitor. So yeah, push those things out completely. And then start with the most likely. And now there's maybe a little bit of a double goal here, right? Because you can have the goal of the manufacturer, of the seller, but you can also have the goal, of course, of the individual shopping for it, and there's a balance between those.
Well, let's drill into that. It's a
Okay.
really important point, Eric, because we think about personalization almost always. Our reflex reaction is do right by the consumer, right? What's the best experience? How do we delight them? And if you think of it, I'm looking at my desk here. So hey, a running GPS, right? Okay, so I'm shopping for a new running GPS because I've had this one 8 years and I need another one. Best possible experience I could have would be going to a sports equipment site that happens to know me because of my prior purchases, knows that I own this thing, would make a recommendation, and the best experience could be it's on its way to you, and you know what, Mark? It's free of charge. That'd be awesome. That's probably if you're short of pinning money in the bag as well, just to, that's probably the best possible experience I could have. That company would go out of business because that doesn't make economic sense for them.
No,
right?
No, exactly.
So it's this balance. Personalization doesn't have to be at all costs. You've got to do right by your shopper, but it's okay to do right by your own business. And so let's play it out. Let's say that I would be happy with two very similar brands, and one the retailer makes 50% margin on, and the other they only make 20% margin on, but the retail price is about the same. Perfectly okay for that retailer to recommend the one they make more money on first, and then secondly, the one that they only make 20 points on. It's their business. It's well within their right. And if I'm indifferent between those two, they both really meet my needs from a personalization point of view, why not optimize for the business as well? And so what's really important within this search capability in a modern search platform is not just to understand the products and the shopper's intent, but to also be able to bring in business rules and data that affect things like what's the order you might want to list products in based on factors like product margin, based on factors like return rates, product quality. If, again, let's paint a picture here. Let's say it's Thursday evening, a promotion is put up live to go live Friday morning to sell some more of these things at 50% discount. Great. And they fly out the door and we have this wonderful promotion. But literally when they're arriving on Monday, Tuesday in the, showing up in the mail or showing up in the courier, half of them don't work. Yep. And what's happening on the back end is that people are getting hold of the customer service people saying, I need to send this thing back, it's garbage. Well, if that promotion's running at the front end, selling lots and lots of these at half price, and half of them are coming back in the other end because they don't actually work, and there's no round trip within the business that says, we have a problem here, stop merchandising.
Yeah.
Those rules need to connect up because siloed businesses can self-destruct when they don't take account of these things. I'm old enough to remember I grew up in the UK, or in South Africa in the UK, and in the UK at one point there was a promotion by Hoover, vacuum cleaner people. And this, I don't know if you remember, but this promotion was basically buy a Hoover for the Christmas period, and you get 2 return flights to New York from London. Well, guess what? People bought a Hoover because they wanted the 2 flights from London, and there was no limit on this thing. It nearly bankrupted Hoover. Because they were on the hook for all these, double flights to New York. People didn't even want the Hoover. It was just the cheapest.
Just a couple of tickets. Yeah, makes total sense.
Exactly. So my point is that these things need to be borne in mind. When we think about search, it's not just search box, type in some results. It is, are those results relevant? Are the recommendations around them relevant to improve the average order value? And indeed, is the experience being tailored to be relevant to make it easy for that person to buy? And those things need to be driven, factoring in things like other business parameters to affect the merchandising itself.
No, I fully hear you on that. That it is based on all the available data that you have to try and accommodate the visitor, the shopper, as much as possible, while also not losing your own goals out of sight,
Right.
and the ability to steer all that. So yeah, fully hear you on that one. Um, yeah, so maybe also to ask you a question on with your experience on marketing, technology, and being a veteran in the industry, when a person or organization is ready to re-platform, and feel free to take that from a search perspective, take it from a website, online environment perspective, what would ideally from an online e-commerce, of course, what would be your biggest recommendations?
I would look for the ability to be agile,
Hmm.
to be able to harness data in automated ways and
Hmm.
try and eliminate as much manual processing as possible, because otherwise you can't compete. Because that's what the kind of tech giants have already been doing for the last decade, you know,
Yeah, no, I fully agree
automating,
on you that.
running at scale, and using, AI and machine learning to predict what people actually want to buy. So if you're not doing that, you're just falling further and further behind.
I think that is a very fitting point, and I think that indeed that when replatforming, it is always, in my opinion, about think about scaling, think where you are today, but also build out where you want to be in a couple of years from now. Eliminate manual work as much as you can, and get all the insights, all the data to your disposal, while first thinking of that data strategy before starting to build. Because it's one of my beliefs that I do ventilate regularly is that integration has become extremely easy these days.
Hmm.
I would even say sometimes too easy. And because it became so easy, everything is slammed on top of each other, and you still end up with that data jumble.
Hmm.
Um, Maybe you have some thoughts on that one as well.
Well, it's true. One of the things I mentioned earlier, we tend to focus on larger organizations
Hmm.
who by almost by definition have got lots of disparate systems, lots of messy data. And one of the challenges many organizations invariably run into is, do we kind of, extract, transfer, and load? Do we ETL all this stuff from one place to another? Do we try and get a perfect homogeneous data set? And our answer to that is no. Like, leave it where it is.
Hmm.
Think of, people talk about a system of record or system of information, and to some degree, I think of it more as an ecosystem where there's stuff in all sorts of different places.
Yeah.
Because of our search roots, we started in search, and we actually started in enterprise search way back
Hmm.
in the day. We have a deep understanding of how to connect to all of these disparate systems, these weird databases, whether they're modern cloud hosted data stacks or some legacy thing that's, was hand built by a guy 15 years ago. No one touches it because no one wants to break it.
Hmm.
That our CTO Laurent has a saying, which is, we've never met a content source we couldn't index. And he's basically right. So how do you take advantage of the information that's in those systems to unify it all together and do two things: unify the content so that it's discoverable, whether that's product information in a PIM, whether that's pricing information, whether that's catalog information, whether that's content related to those products like videos and fact sheets. How do you index that content to put it all to work wheresoever it lives?
Hmm.
And how do you unify and understand the interaction data that people have had with all of those different elements of content, whether that's through the store or a site or a portal or whatever? Because that's the raw material, the data raw material, which AI uses to learn what people found useful, to analyze those patterns, to discover the content that influenced the sale, and therefore be able to recommend it, knowing that you will drive an outcome.
Cool. Very cool. Mark, I think that I don't have any further questions. Would there be anything else you would like to add?
Sure. I think one of the things that I would encourage your listeners and your viewers to think about when they go through these things is to to look at how to harness the best capabilities out on the market, and not be, let's call it, well, let me be blunt, not just be discerning about who you do business with, because there's an awful lot of vendors out there that perhaps are saying, oh yeah, tick, we do that. But when you actually peel it back, they might do something very shallow. We see, for example, on things like, as you mentioned, platform, replatforming exercises, that search might be a checkbox.
Mm-hmm.
That is to grossly underestimate the requirements that your company probably has, and you need to double in, drill in and expand that out to understand what truly responsive search is, to understand how best to deliver automated recommendations, and to change fundamentally the experience of those results to make them work. It's not just about popping up a search box with an index behind it. Those days are gone.
I fully agree on that. I think that search is, the numbers of performance already support that search is such an integrated integrated part of any e-commerce environment. There are numbers out there when you have even an unsuccessful search happening, you already get a higher conversion than no search at all, which always amazes me. Um, but the numbers even double in conversion rates when the search is successful. So I think
Exactly.
that emphasizes how important it is to have a smart search functionality that is fed all the necessary data to do its job, really. And I also think that just having a standard indexed search functionality does not always cover it anymore. And the ability to really have that, I think it actually even has benefits off-site, right? Because you're able to take that in syndication offers and even other channels to just make all that data available. So I think with that, yeah, great point as well.
Good. Well,
So
thank you very much. Really appreciate it, Eric. This was a lot of fun.
it was absolutely long and fun. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for sharing your experience and insights on this. I think we've had several key takeaways from have all the necessary data feed into your e-commerce and the search functionality. It will drive a better performance when done right. And it is about offering the goals that the user is looking for, but also a little bit, of course, your own goals there as well. So as well, thank you very much. Thank you for tuning in, and I wish everyone a great day and to very successful e-commerce solutions.